Welcome to the TTT News Special. I'm DK Ronsta. Thank you so much for joining us. And we are joined by members of the Steering Committee for a Global Student Summit on Vaccine Justice, Carmen Romero and Amílcar Sanatan. And in part one, because this is part two, in part one we spoke to certain things. We got an idea, definitions of vaccine justice, vaccine diplomacy, how students can be a part of this, and we want to bear down on some of those things at this point in time. But Amílcar, let me ask you though, what are the objectives of the summit? What does this summit aim to do?
We have some key objectives, DK, that is coming out of the Global Student Summit on vaccine justice. One of them is to produce a current understanding on the COVID-19 vaccine justice. What does the student movement think vaccine justice is? What is the definition we would like to operationalize? And what is the picture we have of the global context? A second aspect is that we need to politicize that discourse on COVID-19 vaccines. This is not just a medical conversation happening, but one on race, ethnicity, class, gender, disability, geographic difference. And we want to advance a rights-based approach. And really, we really want to bring up this issue of institutional responsibility. It's not just about making demands of governments. We think as student organizations and movements, we have to take a position which is pro-vaccine and a way that we will engage our communities and membership through campaigns. And that is one of the outputs coming out of the summit, where we are preparing a toolkit as well for advocacy at different levels.
And you talk about politicizing the discourse. And Carmen, I want to bring you in, and I'll also ask for Amílcar's view on it, because sometimes when people hear politics, and they just think that, okay, well, this side saying this, that side saying that. How do we rise above that? And I also hark back to something that you said in part one of the conversation, where if you don't take your politics into your own hands, somebody will take it and do it for you in a way that you may not find most ideal.
But also, I think trying to be like really pedagogical for those one that tend to get a bit afraid of politics, I would say that this is also about common sense. This is something that like we cannot keep on just like selling our lives and making our lives something that you can sell and buy. And this is not what we are supposed to do as human beings. We are supposed to have basic right to access to basic access to rights and so on. And this is like just common sense. Like, how am I supposed to keep on moving forward as a young student if everything is going wrong? Of course, I have to take a stand. And of course, I'm not going to just take a stand because of what's going on in my life, but because I do see what's going on in my friends' lives, in my family's life, and also like in the places where I live. I do see the consequences of this pandemic. And this is something that is affecting all of us. So of course we have to take a stand, and of course we have to do our part.
Now, Carmen, you talk about common sense, and I get a little nervous because sometimes we say common sense not that common. But Amílcar, what's your take on this? How do we politicize it? How do we start that kind of groundswell to say, okay, well, we are in accord on this level, so the powers that be in terms of policy makers have no choice but to say, okay, well, let's move forward like this?
Most definitely. I think the conversation is already politicized. It's not a bad word. People think about governments as who they vote for. We talk about the responsibility of the state, the accountability of the state to the people. So we look at the state as a system which governs us in our everyday lives. One of the things people have been talking about is skipping the line to get vaccines. Some persons with the right connections and links have the social resources to procure vaccines ahead of others, whether they were eligible for it or not. And what does that mean? That transparency is an issue and corruption around the issue of vaccine distribution. Politicizing that discourse. Should international students who cannot afford to go home still be able to get vaccines in the country that they study in? Yes. But some persons would say it should only be for persons with a Trinidad and Tobago birth certificate, or if it's being distributed in Ghana, persons of Ghanaian origin. No, migrants have the right to get vaccines. Do non-nationals have the right to get vaccines in our country? We think so. So there are certain values and political issues that emerge when we have the debate, when we have the banter and the pick-on. And what we need to do is to find out a way we could all move forward in a practical way. Yes, we have scarce resources in our country, but the values of justice, equality, and fairness are not scarce, they are renewable resources. And we need to seriously think about that in serving the interests of all people. Because COVID-19 does not ask you for a passport. COVID-19 does not ask you for your educational or economic background. And if the disease could have that non-discrimination attitude, I think the just response requires one as well.
But you say that and you make me think of Animal Farm, where all animals are equal, but some animals are a little more equal than others. But what is also interesting to me is that the way that you bring that into stark relief, both of you, and say, okay, well, are these the metrics that we use to allow someone to have a vaccine or not allow someone to have a vaccine? And there being both pros and cons for them, it seems as though that is some of the same arguments that is being used for vaccine inequity for countries in the Caribbean. So it seems as though, well, there's a saying that donkeys say will not level, and I see it being articulated here in this point. But Amílcar, I want to stay with you for a moment and ask, do you think that the disruption of COVID can be a good thing in terms of how we have these political discourses? Because many times there are things that happen, they come to a head, and we say, okay, well, we'll wait out 9 days, and we hear a lot less about it. Something like this that has been ongoing for so long, do you think that will help to change the mindset of how we address certain things, how we move forward, how we have these conversations, and ultimately how we politicize them for good?
Well, the first thing, DK, I don't think anything good has come out of COVID. If we look at almost around the world, we have almost 4 million deaths coming out of a pandemic. I would never say that this was an opportunity for us to reflect, think, and benefit from. This has disrupted our lives in a big way that will be very difficult for us to recover from. That being said, that is the human condition, and we need to confront this reality and move ahead. Unfortunately, throughout the world, it has not always been hopeful. We see the rise of authoritarianism and fascist governments who have bullied their way throughout the crisis to not believe in the science, to become more corrupt and help their friends first, and promote vaccine hesitancy in public, but vaccination in private. We have seen the role of governments which have taken up an authoritarian approach to media and information, where they bully alternative opinions, where they don't allow for a creative and a wider political forum for views. We've also seen how persons have used this opportunity for political partisanship when a government might take the right approach, but they will take up a contrary approach, even if they might put lives at risk. So the global picture, yes, there are some good things in terms of what was long debated has been taken up with a little bit more speed, but the political situation is not as open as we would like it to be. And that is why the Global Student Summit and the many other campaigns and summits that people have hosted are trying to reiterate and make sure that we stay on course and not give up our power.
Thank you very much, Amílcar, Sanatan, Carmen, Romero. We are speaking with you about the Global Student Summit on Vaccine Justice. When we return from this break, Carmen, I want to ask you, what are some of those expected outcomes from the summit? We ask you that when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Amílcar Sanatan and Carmen Romero, steering committee members of the Global Student Summit on Vaccine Justice. Carmen, what are some of the outcomes that you are looking forward to from this summit?
Well, there are like different things that we want to achieve. First of all, we want to have the Port of Spain declaration of Global Student Summit on vaccine justice. This kind of things, these outcomes, these goals that we want to achieve, we will do it through discussions and through fruitful debates that we will have with students from all over the world. We also want to have a publication of the summit as a summary report. We also want to have another publication on vaccine justice and activism toolkit, because we also understand how necessary it is to give capacity building to those students organizations that have less resources to manage on their own this crisis. And at the same time, we want to coordinate a social media campaign on vaccine justice and regional among regional student platforms. Something that I think it's especially interesting from the Global Student Forum is that even though we are composed by platforms from all over the world, we tend to have pretty similar demands, and this is something that shows us that basically it's not just our very own countries that, of course, we all have particular issues to fight, but there is a system, a global system that is fighting against us as students, as a future generation, and we have to fight as well. We need to move forward. We need to push for certain kind of demands, and we have to do it globally, because this crisis have taught us that basically we cannot do things alone. We have to do it with our peers, with our colleagues, and we have to coordinate ourselves.
And I'm very happy to be jumping between global and local situations and circumstances. Amílcar, just now I'm going to ask you about some of the local actions that may have promoted vaccine justice within the community. But Carmen, I want to stay with you though and ask you, when does this summit happen? How do people log on to it? What are the logistics of engaging with this Global Student Summit?
The Global Student Summit, it's going to be on the 12th of July. We are doing it, I cannot really tell you right now the time frame, because we're always having these time differences, but all the information can be found in our website, in the Global Student Forum website, and it's completely open to everyone. Something that we've been doing during this whole year through the pandemic, it's basically to organize online events that we are trying to be as accessible as possible. We understand that not everyone might have access to internet, but this is what we have right now. And we are trying to make it as accessible as possible. So anyone that wishes to join and can be part of the discussion.
All right, and Amílcar, one of the things that Carmen spoke about in the expected outcomes is being able to enlarge the toolkits, building resources for individuals so that they can go and do things like that. But what are some of those local actions advancing vaccine justice at the community level from your view of the lay of the land here?
Well, the first thing is we usually take things in a regional focus, and I think Brazil has given a lot of inspiration to movements around the world from the perspective of students, where they had their bread, life, and education campaign to promote vaccine justice, but also ensure that young people and students took to the streets, brave a pandemic, to challenge their government to ensure that they had a democratic society. And that is the type of political change people are demanding at this time. At the local level, there are a number of civil society actors that have taken up the issue, but the extent to which it has been coordinated, the landscape is wanting. And that is why we are happy to partner with the Cipriani College, the Guild of Students at Cipriani College of Labor Studies. We are happy to partner with Tobago Youth Council, the Caribbean Institute for Women and Leadership Trinidad and Tobago chapter, and the University of the West Indies Guild of Students, which themselves have adopted a pro-vaccine position and are happy to coordinate a public campaign around vaccine justice in Trinidad and Tobago within the coming weeks. And that is why we believe we are an organization that came through movements, and we are here to amplify the voices of our movements and the persons in struggle. And I'm very happy to be a part of the work happening here at the local level in Trinidad and Tobago struggle.
So how do we prioritize some of these things in terms of the summit? So what are some of these key priorities that you're looking to address, or you're looking to have come out, or need to take place in incremental manners for the outcome that you want to see achieved?
Some of the key priorities, the first one will be looking at the development agenda. How do we promote peace and sustainability moving ahead? That is a fundamental priority, no two ways about that. The second one is to give support to our student movements who are struggling right now. We have a panel dedicated. It's insufficient when you look at the global picture, but we have our representatives from India, representatives from Brazil, representatives from Caribbean, and also representatives from the United States who are involved in promoting vaccine justice at the local level. That is very important. And a third aspect, which is something we have adopted, for which Carmen is also the chair of, in terms of gender justice in our working groups, we have promoted this idea of gender justice through and beyond the pandemic. We cannot return to normal because the normal is a patriarchal reality. And we are a decolonial organization and a depatriarchal organization. And we need to guarantee the rights of girls and women, which has been eroded in so many ways that the UN Women refers to it as a shadow pandemic. And that has no future in the society we want to build. And that is why we have taken a very serious position on gender justice.
And that brings me to the question, Carmen, what are some of those themes that will be addressed during the entire summit?
Well, as Amílcar was saying, we're going to approach different kind of things. I would like to give a special attention to what he was mentioning about gender justice, because we've seen through many of our members how the situation of women all over the world, but also girls and young women, has really worsened. It's even difficult to tell. But for example, in Africa, many young women and many girls have been suffering violations, rape, and awful things just because they had to be locked with their abusers. And this is really complicated, and this is something that we need to speak about, because if we don't speak about it, then it doesn't exist. So of course, this is especially important, but also, as Amílcar was saying, we will talk about a fair distribution of the vaccines all over the world. For this, we have speakers from many different countries, and I hope the discussions are going to be really fruitful, and we are going to be able to keep on moving forward.
And some of the things that you're carrying me back in terms of building that level of trust so that you can have the conversation makes me think of things like the Tuskegee Airmen, Henrietta Lacks, and once again, as you pointed to, Carmen, the fact that historically there is this record of inequity, injustice, and basically looking and seeing that there are groups on the periphery, there are groups on the inside, and the people who suffer are usually the people who are recorded as suffering. But in going though, I'll ask you, please, Amílcar, once more, how do people be a part of the conference, and in terms of having the local times, knowing how it is that is taking place, and basically just those closing words before we go?
Yes, if you would like to join the Vaccine Justice Summit, where we look at fairness, trust, and responsibility, you can go on globalstudentforum.org. Globalstudentforum.org. It's on the 12th of July, and it begins at 9 a.m. in Trinidad and Tobago. You could also follow the pages of the All Africa Students Union, Caribbean Institute for Women and Leadership, Cipriani Guild, the Commonwealth Students Association, European Students Union, UWI Guild of Students, the Organizing Bureau of European Schools, Organización Continental Latinoamericana y Caribeña de Estudiantes, and the Tobago Youth Council. You could join any of those pages. Those are our partners, and they are sharing our work because this is a global movement. And you register for it, you'll get these Zoom credentials and contribute to the Declaration of Port of Spain.
Carmen, Romero, Amílcar, Sanatan, thank you very much for making the time and doing the work, boots on the ground. And on behalf of the entire news team, we want to thank you for being a part of the TTT News Special. Have a good one.